What's up guys, and welcome back to Move Plus. Hope you're all keeping well out there. We're gonna get into this warm up. So the first minute of which is gonna be any cardio of your choice. We're gonna go with some step ups, which is gonna look like this. So just nice and straightforward, up and down on that for the first minute. The next 4 minutes are going to be 20 seconds on good mornings, and these will just be body weight good mornings, so just a simple hinge at the hips. 10-second rest, and then we go into 20 seconds of plate ground to overhead. So that'll be from floor up to lockout. Okay, again, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and those two things will just alternate back and forth for those remaining 4 minutes. Good to go? All right, starting in 10, so 1 minute of cardio of your choice, guys. You can pick whatever you want to do here. We are going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So this one, guys, if you're doing the same thing as us, go for something low, something fairly easy, something that you can just keep continuous, and something that feels good on the body to just roll straight into. If you've been sitting still all day, maybe at a computer, or you've been driving, that sort of stuff, you haven't been moving around too much, we don't want to go anything too aggressive, like a really high, 24 or something like that. Try to go for something on the lower side, and just allow your joints and your muscles the time to just kind of heat up, get the blood flow going, get everything feeling good before we get into the fast and heavy and all that sort of thing. So we've got about 25 more seconds, and from here, guys, the next 4 minutes has that kind of Tabata setup, which is the 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off format. That'll be with the body weight good mornings and the plate ground overheads. 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So into the body weight good mornings, guys. So this one is real simple, but we do want to be specific about the body position, right? So all we're doing is just tilting over, but we want to make sure that the spine stays in a fixed position. So we are hinging at the hip joint itself. We're not rounding or curving the spine over. And resting. So 10-second break. We're going to go into the plate ground overheads now. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So as far as the hips go, guys, it's a fairly similar kind of position. We'll probably have the stance maybe a little wider, probably see a little bit more knee bend as we kind of come down to reach for the floor, but pretty much all the same there. We have that same feeling of the spine being fixed. I'm going to touch the plate to the ground at the bottom and then full lockout overhead. And resting. So another 10-second rest. We'll move back onto the good mornings. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So you really want to see those nice vertical shins. You can see that when Em does this, her upper leg is going to move a little bit, but the lower leg is going to stay pretty well still, which means the knees are going to stay still, and we just reach back into that hinge pattern. We're not letting the knees soften to go forwards. And resting. Going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So you'll notice that the angle of the plate will change from top to bottom. At the bottom, we're going to have it basically straight up and down. So we're reaching the top sort of lip of the plate for the floor, have thumbs pointed down. And then at the top, it's going to roll up to a flat position as our arms hit the lockout. And resting. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. Now, if you find you've got really tight hamstrings, guys, maybe your mobility is not crash hot, something you're still working on, just go to where you can. We can see that Em's sort of getting pretty much down to almost like a 90-degree bend at the hip, which is ideally what the end game of this is. For you, you might be just going to like a 45 angle and just working on kind of isolating at the hip, resting for me, and that will get better and better over time as we kind of press and open up that mobility. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So looking at the overhead position now, guys, on the plate ground overhead, we want to see the head just slightly pop through. So it's a nice stacked position. So if you ever find when you're doing this that you can see your arms and you can see the plate, generally means that you're either reaching too far out in front or you're leaning back to hit that lockout position. And resting. Okay, we're going to go one more cycle of each of them. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. Notice that Em's head will move with the body, so she's not craning the neck up as she comes down. She's actually going to be looking forwards at the top and then slightly downwards at the bottom there, so the whole spine fixes as one piece. And resting. Three, two, one, and go for it. So last section of the warm-up. Going to keep that plate as a fairly close line up the front of the body. Make sure doesn't turn into a swinging motion. It's a pull into a press. So think of like a kind of a muscle clean and press or a muscle snatch kind of motion. And resting. Alrighty, guys. So that is the warm-up done. I'm going to take a little bit of recovery time and then we're going to check out the build section next. Alrighty guys, we're going to check out the build workout now. So this one is 9 minutes in length and what we have is 3 minutes we're going to rotate between for 3 rounds. So minute 1, what we're going to see is a single leg RDL or Romanian deadlift. So that's going to look like this. Okay, so we will do 25 seconds on one side and then 25 seconds on the other side. All right, from there, the next minute, what we'll be doing is a single dumbbell good morning. So this one, you can have the dumbbell up at front rack, you can have it on the back of the shoulders, goblet style, whatever feels comfortable. Em's just gonna kind of hug it into her chest there. And what we're gonna do is hinge over. So the same we did in the warm up, this is now just a weighted version of it, okay? And then minute 3, we have dumbbell slides for 45 seconds. So with this one, just taking a kind of plank position, Em's doing the scaled version on the knees there, but you can do it on the toes if you want, and we're just transferring right to left with those. So minute 1 is 25 seconds each side on the single leg RDLs, minute 2 is 45 seconds on the good mornings, minute 3 is 45 seconds on the slides. Good to go? Yep. All right, starting in 10. So we're gonna be doing this for 9 minutes in total. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So the big challenge of this one, guys, straight out of the gates, you'll notice is balance, right? This is why it's really important to just take it slow. I'm sort of going 2 or 3 seconds down, 2 or 3 seconds up. And the big thing here that's the game changer, that back leg, that's to control and to balance, right? You're gonna reach that leg out as much as you can, put a lot of focus on that, and make the whole movement a lot easier. Okay, and switching sides. So if you are lazy through that back leg and you just let it kind of droop down, it's very hard to get the balance feeling and getting good tension through the back and everything like that and through the hamstrings. So you want to reach that back leg. It will kind of act like a counterbalance. Three, 2, 1, and resting. So we're going to move to the single dumbbell good mornings next. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So like we did in the warm-up, guys, we are hinging at the hips, a little bit of softness in the knees, but minimal, right? We're trying to get away with as little as possible. If you've got tight hamstrings, you'll notice more of a knee bend, and over time that will get less and less and less. You'll get to the point where you feel like your knees are almost straight, but they're just off of locked. And it's a big reach back with those hips. So trying to find the hamstrings, find the glutes, and get that feeling of a stretch and then a contraction. See, Em's got that really nice straight back position. She's keeping the head with the body, keeping the weight close. I mentioned before, you guys can hold it in a front rack. You can go on the back of the shoulders. It's wherever feels comfortable for you. 5 more seconds. And resting. Okay, so 15-second rest here, guys. At the minute, we're gonna go into dumbbell slides. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So setting up in that plank position, guys, as I said, this is more the scaled version, so knees on the ground, okay? If you want to go up to the full version, it's up on the toes. The key thing with this is trying to stabilize, right? We've got 4 points of contact with the 2 hands and the 2 knees on the ground, or 2 feet on the ground. And as soon as we take one hand away, and then especially when we grab the weight of the dumbbell, it's going to want to shift things. So your job is to stay really braced through that midsection, strong through the hips, everything like that, and keep it nice and centered. So this is one of those ones that's best done slow, very much like the RDLs that we did in the first minute. 5 more seconds. And resting. Okay, so that's one full cycle, guys. We're gonna come back around to the top of the list, so go back to the RDLs again. Going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So as far as the weight with this guys goes, we can go one-handed like Em's doing there and just run it down the front of the shin. You can go both hands on if you want to. You can also go no weight. If this is something that you're doing for the first time, or maybe you have a lot of trouble with the balance, just focus more on the movement rather than the loading. Although I will say sometimes it does help to have a bit of weight to kind of ground you a little bit. Switching sides. Sometimes you can use that as a little bit of counterweight to kind of hold yourself in place. But feel free to get rid of it if you feel like you need to. So similar kind of leg position as far as like the knee is just going to soften and it's mostly at the hip. So very similar to the good morning. We'll go one more, 3, 2, 1, and resting. So moving to the good mornings on the next one. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. If you do happen to be doing this one with the dumbbell on the back rack, guys, so sitting on the back of the shoulders, good idea to kind of keep the hands with it and stop the middle bar of the dumbbell from resting on your neck. You want to feel like you're on the meat of your traps there rather than on the bones of your spine. So try to keep the hands with it and just keep that little bit of backwards pressure to stop that happening. What you'll find is kind of the higher up the body this is, the more difficult it becomes. So if I was to hold it down near my belly, that's obviously closer to my hips. That's going to be easier than if I have it up in the front rack or right up on the back of the shoulders there. And resting. So dumbbell slides are next. Three, 2, 1, and go for it. So as far as the setup of this one goes, guys, we want to have the knees or feet, depending which version of this you're doing, at about kind of hip to shoulder width, and the hands are going to be similar. So if you find that this is really, really difficult, and the second you take your hand away, you feel like you're going to topple over, take the feet out a little bit wider and make it a little bit more like a kind of a wider base, so a little bit more like a tripod. And that way you'll have a little bit more stability. The 3 points of contact that are left over when you lift the hand up are going to support you a little bit more. You should definitely have the feeling of like pushing into the ground and digging the feet or the knees into the ground to stabilize yourself. And resting. All right, that's 2 full cycles, guys. We've got 1 more to go, and that'll take us up to the 9-minute marker. We're going to go back onto the RDLs again. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. Now if you watch, M's going to about mid shin height, which is good. You don't necessarily have to go to the ground as we would a regular deadlift. Just looking for a nice amount of depth. And we can see her body kind of getting to pretty much flat parallel with the ground, switching sides. That's the end game of this, is being able to get yourself into that nice extended position or that stretched position through the hamstring there. Good to watch out too that we stay nice and square as we do this. We're trying not to rotate as we reach down. All right, resting. So back to the good mornings. Going in 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So good to actively contract the things we're trying to work here, guys. You'll find that you'll feel your low back no matter what. That's going to be just stabilizing that spinal position. But the glutes and the hamstrings are really where we want to get that feeling of work happening. So as you hit that stretch position, tense those and keep your brain kind of connected to those muscles. Get them to really squeeze as we stand up and lock them in place. What you don't want to do is let the low back just dominate the movement and do all the work. You want to feel like that lower body is doing a lot of work. And resting. Okay, we've got one last minute on those dumbbell slides. 3, 2, 1, and go for it. So active shoulders, really important with this one, guys. You don't want to feel like you're slumping into it or sagging through the midsection. Keep everything nice and tight, nice and solid. The dumbbell will just end up basically behind the wrist each time. So as you draw it across, you're lining it up with where you're going to plant that hand. We've got about 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, done. Guys, that is the build section done. Have a little bit of recovery time, and then we're gonna go through some cool down stretches next. Alrighty guys, so now that all the hard stuff is done, we're gonna get into a couple of drills just to cool things down, loosen the body up. So the first one is what we call the big circle. We're gonna do this for 1 minute. So it's a wide stance, starting above the head there, and then we are basically, as the name suggests, just drawing a really big circle. So looking at changing direction each time, or doing a couple one way, a couple the other way just to even it up, but looking at really getting into hamstrings, groin. You should get a little bit of like shoulders, back, lats, everything as well. So just try and make the circle as big as possible. Nice slow circles. And over time what we should see is that the stance can get a little wider, a little wider, a little wider. We start to come down almost into sort of a Cossack squat position. You can sort of bend the knees, you come down to the corner, get down nice and low. You can see Em's just kind of gliding the fingertips along the ground, which is ultimately the depth we want to be able to get down to. At the top, you can also feel free to kind of lean back, open up the abs a little bit, stretch out through that front line there. Nice and slow. All right, so that's drill 1. The second one is a lying glute stretch. So just going to go on our back, hook one leg up on top of the other, and then we're just going to grab onto and then grabbing onto that left leg. So she's just drawing that in. She's going to allow herself to kind of relax back into it. So her right leg is the one that we're stretching at the moment. And that's just getting into that hip and that glute there. You might even get a little bit of low back if you're quite tight through there. You'll feel that crank up a little bit. So just hanging out on that. We'll do 45 seconds on each side. Five more seconds. And switching sides. So she's got just the edge of her ankle on there, so we don't want to go too high up on the leg. We want to try and create as much angle as we can. A couple things you can play around with, guys, if you want to actually press down on that knee, just to kind of create a little bit more rotation at the hip. And for some of you, it might feel really tight. You might not even have to grab and hold onto the leg. You might even just crossing the leg over might be enough of a stretch for you. For some of you, on the flip side of it, if that's not enough, you can grab onto the shin and draw it in even closer. So that's up to you as to where your level is at. But we just want to allow the rest of the body to kind of sink back, draw on that stretch, and just hang out on that. Alrighty, so those are your 2 drills, guys. Let's see a handful of rounds on that, depending on how much time you got. Try to get as much mobility in it as you can, get the body nice and loose. Otherwise, we will catch you next time, and that's been your MOV+ workout.